We are back and ready to kick off our first match of the day between Thijs and Bozzzton. And again, we talk about this a lot, but this is a Division B match. And already with this match, it's going to start just maybe moving the numbers around a little bit, maybe making that table of results a little bit more different or concrete as we move on throughout the weekend and find out who we're going to be saying goodbye to at the end, because it's going to happen, right? Unfortunately, we've got to that point. We've cast a lot of Hearthstone. We've seen the GMs play a lot of Hearthstone as well. But at the end of it, we have to say goodbye to 3 players. And that means we'll get 3 more in the next season. But for now, let's talk about these two, Thijs and Bozzzton. We're going to see a double warrior ban out from these players. And the only difference in their lineup is that Highlander Hunter versus the Druid, as both players are bringing Rogue and both players are bringing Demon Hunter.
Yeah, this is almost kind of an old school lineup, I guess, in terms of, we talked about how the meta has evolved week by week for us. And we've had like the Priest week, this is the Quest Warlock week. We've had the No Faith in Rogue week where a lot of players were dropping the Rogue as well. Whereas this is kind of all the way back to the beginning where we're seeing the spread of decks that we were really kind of seeing in week 1 of Grandmasters, where it was just Demon Hunter, Warrior, Rogue, plus your 4th deck. Sometimes it was Druid, sometimes it was Hunter, sometimes it was Mage. And that's just kind of back to what we have here between these two players at least. But these two are kind of the outliers in terms of those lineups here this week in GM.
It really is. And I think, again, every time I see Druid, although I think the deck's fine, every time I see it in a lineup, I always just automate to, oh, it's the Druid that really needs to get a win here. And maybe I've got too much confidence in other decks. Interesting spell Druid cards there, so ignore those. And Tempo Demon Hunter, so anyway, ignore all that. But I will say, maybe it's a slight bias again towards Hunter, but I just feel it really is, like with Druid, it's, oh, that needs to get a win. And again, maybe it's just kind of a Wild West deck where, yeah, it can just grab wins that are almost unstoppable, and that's why you play it a percentage of the time. That just happens, and that's strong enough to bring to a lineup, especially when I feel no one's really locked in on that 4th deck choice overall.
Yeah, I do feel like Spell Druid would be improved a little bit if it could play activated Fate Weavers. So maybe Thijs just has the tech. Maybe
just
he's
ahead
just
of the
got
meta
it down
game.
in this scenario. Yeah, Thijs, as always, just innovating.
I will say as well, what's been very interesting to me over Grandmasters, or at least the round robin stage, is we haven't had a refined meta, have we? We've not really had back-to-back weeks where it's been, okay, same lineups, but did the players tech differently? Have the players just got better at these decks? It's very much what's the bring this week. And the fact that we went from priests to 0 priests just blows my mind, that the universal decision across Grandmasters was that strong to say, priest is not good enough now because this other deck exists. And we see both players not bringing priest, but also not bringing that warlock to test out either. It's very interesting to me.
And it makes it very difficult to build the lists that even you're certain of when the meta is so turbulent. If you're very confident what the most popular 4 decks are going to be, that informs how you build your Demon Hunter, how you build your Warrior, because you can say, okay, if my Warrior's getting left up, then this is going to happen. Like in the Priest week, for example, I was going on about how everyone should have had green skin in their Warrior,
right?
Because if Priest is going to leave you up, then you want to have the green skin in your Warrior to be able to fight that matchup as best as you can. But if you have no idea what the 3rd and 4th decks are for your opponents, like, do you want Blowtorch Saboteur in your Demon Hunter? Do you want 2 Frozen Shadow Weavers? Do you want Beaming Sidekicks? Like, what tech cards are you supposed to play in these like floating spots? It's really, really hard to get a strong read on.
Yeah, and we see this also going into deck building as we get into game number 1 here. Bozzzton on the bottom on this Demon Hunter versus Thijs' Rogue, and Bozzzton running like 1 Crimson Sigil runner, only 1 Shadow Weaver, which is crazy to me, and the 1 Spectral Sight as well those double Sightless Watchers. So overall, a fairly consistent list, but I feel like these 2 to 3 spots are always up for contention in Demon Hunter right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to use coin here on this sidekick. Buff the health with the Battle Mage there. It would dodge a backstab, but overall, I think if it's just backstab dagger, Bozzzton's probably okay with that turn coming out of Thijs. A little bit unfortunate, but I think holding the coin when he has Glaive Bound and most importantly, I think War Glaives is pretty powerful, right?
Yeah, so there's kind of a lot going on already here. As you said, coin when you have the double 5 hand, nutty, you do kind of want to hold on for those big turn 5 power plays. But also just the mere fact that Bozzzton has coin means that Rogue's on the play. And when rogues want on the play, they don't want to backstab on turn 2. They want to backstab Miscreant on turn 3 instead. So leaving this out as a 2-2, you can see that exact dynamic from Thijs, where he says, nope, I'm just going to let this minion hit me for 2 because activating my Miscreant next turn is just more powerful.
Yeah, and Thijs is playing an interesting list as well, which will probably make him maybe want to be on coin a little bit more, honestly, is he's playing the secret package, but he's got those questing adventurers in this list.
Right.
So he's playing a deck with a bit more of a, I would say, body to it, with the fact that he can just make these big dudes and just punch you in the face and win, which is something that Rogue, I feel at least, hasn't really done for a long time as an actual game plan.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder whether this is a Quest Warlock recognition, because I've been playing a ton of Quest Warlock on ladder recently, and there's been multiple matchups against Rogue where I get into the position of like, okay, cool, I've killed like every threat. I've dealt with all their stuff. The Togwaggle's gone. They've played their Galakron. They've survived all the 0-mana cards. The Edwin's gone. How can I possibly lose? And then all of a sudden there's just 2 questing adventurers on the board and I have no other resources left to deal with. So it's definitely been getting me a little bit in that matchup when they have those extra big threats available. So I wonder if Thijs has a little bit of Quest Warlock in mind when he builds his deck in this way.
And it's one of the, I would call it like an half tech card, because it's not like you're running Ooze against weapon-only decks, and then it's nothing versus without. Like Quest Adventurer is just a pretty good card, actually, in general. So it's not like it's completely going to whiff in other matchups. I would say maybe out of all the matchups, one like Demon Hunter could be the punish, because it gets very, very difficult to play if you're fending off some level of high aggression. And really, that's what Rogue wants to do, at least in the early turns of the game.
Right. You can see here, just from Thijs, the level of early board control you get from Evil Miscreant in this matchup is just so absurd. You see if Bozzzton even tried to develop here, then, Ferrocat alongside Rush Lackey and Titanic Lackey would be able to seize back board control incredibly easily. Now Thijs even has Shadow Step options available to dominate this board even further. Evil Miscreant is just the card in this matchup, I think.
Honestly, just anything with a substantial amount of health is just a problem, especially if it's an early cost. It's the reason why Warmaul Challenger is very good, especially in this matchup. It's the reason why even if you just randomly had overconfident Orcs in your deck against Demon Hunter, it's so powerful, because 6 health is just a lot to deal with.
Yeah, we get the coin payoff now for Bozzzton. Alongside this Twin Slice, he is going to be able to mop this up. There is a potential troll outcome on the Grand Mummy here that could bite Bozzzton and force the use of that second slice. Ooh. Lied! Liar, Raven.
How far do you think Bozzzton's going to take this, though? Because there's a few options here. He could kill the Miscreant and then call it a day. He still has time to swing. He definitely will want to save, I think, 1 swing for next turn with a big Glade Bound. But do you think he needs to kill, say now, the Lackey or the Mummy, as well as the Miscreant?
He does still have the second slice for next turn this way, so he could choose to go all in. I wouldn't hate to see it, but the other minions are just so innocuous looking in this position.
That's it. I think like the actual damage next turn that you could still use the second slice for, is swinging for 4 might just be enough to have a bigger swing turn overall.
Right.
Now he does have the Umber Wing as well to keep the weapon pressure up to a certain extent later on.
Say that using up the weapon here and then having just second slice plus Glade Bound as your turn next turn is stronger against exactly Shield of Galakron coming down, which is the on-curve play for Thijs. So now it's just a little bit awkward the way your damage breakpoints line up.
So do you think he's going to ever just Glade Bound face here, or maybe the Pharaoh Cat?
Wait, what? Hang on, what? I'm confused. He'd have to attack the 4/5 for 3? You can't just leave that as a 4/2 and then play your Glade Bound and not kill it, right?
No, but you can attack it for 4 and then you still have the damage from the second slice, right?
Gotcha, okay. So you're using the second slice as well?
Yes, yeah. Sorry. He's going to forgo it completely and just use the help of his hero power to do this cleanly, which honestly, kill this cleanly, you'll never hear too much of an argument for me, even if there's no Glade Bound this turn. Because what I was suggesting was very unfun. It's just it got the job done to a certain extent.
Yeah, I like this play. It's good use of the mechanics with the extra attack from the from the Warglaives, and it's also a final push for board control, which I think is importantly timed with the way Bozzzton's hand looks now. I think this will probably be one of the last times he really tries to grab board control, and then if he can use this turn to get a bit of this extra minion damage to go face, well then he's just looking at Metamorphosis Glaive Bounce on Kane in hand, just to smash face with everything he's got.
Thijs has options now, and I wonder how much he's considering actually Faceless Lackey to build a board himself along with that Shadow Step. Could even use the Goblin Lackey if there's a reasonably sized 2-drop knocking about. And
yeah, really good chance this goes well, because the Grand Mummy buff will even make a smaller 2-drop very relevant here. But now, since he only needs 4 attack, yeah, this is very nice sequencing from Thijs. He only needs the 4 attack. He's always going to give it +1 from the rush anyway, so he might as well get that done before the Grand Mummy trade happens.
Yeah, and I imagine he does want to... Okay, what do you think about this? So, Thijs, of course, has a Lackey and Togwaggle next turn. That's a given, because he has one. The problem is it's Rush Lackey, and for me... I think I would have actually Shadow Stepped the Faceless just to keep the board presence going and not be locked into potentially just a Rush Lackey Tog.
I grow impatient.
I think it's close. I don't think it's just a given, but I think it's something to consider, because when's this Shadow Step getting tons of value right now?
Yeah, so here's the reason I like it. You can Shadow Step the Faceless Lackey in this case, as you say, and then play Faceless Lackey, Togwaggle, and then rush the Togwaggle into something to actually relieve tempo. So you don't have the slow turn of playing Togwaggle in that position. So yeah, I think I do like going for that play instead. Because you could still guarantee the buff going onto something else, right? It's not like you'd be stepping the buffed Lackey.
Yeah, because you would have stepped it before the trade.
Yeah.
I just worry, like, for Thijs here, if he wants to go for the Tog turn, it's so slow. It doesn't actually do anything, right?
It's the only play, though. Thijs is at 28. I mean, there's also that factor.
Whenever I've given Demon the time, they kill me, so I'm afraid. He does now, though, have... Go on.
It's a very murdery looking hand from the Demon Hunter side as well. So he's going to use the Shadow Step now on the Rush Lackey, which kind of achieves the same thing as we were talking about, but you're just -1 extra 2-drop on the board this turn, and the having +1/+1 on the board on the previous turn. So you can kind of argue about that between yourselves if you really want to. I don't think it's strictly wrong either way.
Funnily enough, I actually didn't want to see the Shadow Step this turn. Because for me, he has Ambush, Blackjack Stunner, Shadow Step, Blackjack Stunner next turn. Which it like fights back against the tempo play you at least half expected when you give Demon Hunter a full turn to do something. I don't know. Then I felt like the Shadow Step was well worth keeping. It was facing down a 2/2.
Forget about it, Raven!
That is like
Forget everything we've talked about! None of it matters! Look at that! Look at the wand!
Imagine if he could have Shadow Stepped this Stunner!
Oh, sure! He'd just be winning 120% of the time instead of 100% of the time!
I don't know about you, Sor, but when I can break 100%, I try it, okay? It normally ends well.
What was that wand?
The best. That's what it was. Honestly, even like... I won't say it's a shame by any means, but if we were on turn 9 going to 10 for Thijs, even the Colossus of the Moon is pretty sick. Because Demon Hunter could just never kill it, right? It's just immortal.
Yeah.
And Thijs has arguably the health to just play a 10-mana 10/10, and then it just kills Bozzzton the turn after.
One Frozen Shadow Weaver in Bozzzton's deck. I guess that's something that we do have to take. I don't think a Frozen would allow him to set up a race scenario here, but maybe in some bizarre backwards world, 2 Frozen Shadow Weavers would be able to set up some kind of race scenario here, but even then, seems pretty unlikely.
I do think, honestly, right now, Bozzzton just got, right? But we do have to look at deck building choices. This would be much easier to deal with. Okay, much easier, if you understand what I mean. But that Frozen Shadow Weaver, as Thijs does take game number 1, of course, that Frozen Shadow Weaver would stop the Van Cleave. It wouldn't stop the questing, right? That's the issue. And Bozzzton only runs one Frozen Shadow Weaver, and Thijs put questings in Rogue, which are by no means a choice. So yes, the wand was insane. Obviously, it was game-winning, but it's just interesting to see that Thijs had more bigger singular threats, and Bozzzton runs less Shadow Weavers. It's just an interesting interaction overall, and maybe not as relevant for that single game of Hearthstone, but decent overall.
I don't care about any of that. I care about two things. One, that was the most insane wand I've ever seen in my life. And two, how baller that tea pour was at the end for Thijs as we went to him. Just like, yep, standard. Just pour myself a cup of tea. There we go. Standard day in the life of Thijs.
I thought you were going to say, I only care about two things. Quest Adventurer and Edwin Van Cleave.
Yeah.
And that's just going to be... Okay, well, that was a pretty explosive game number 1 between Thijs and Bozzzton, but it is only one game. These players have got plenty more time to play it out, and Bozzzton's got time to fight back. But we're going to go to a quick break while we set up game number 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.
You know, if you could give me something from the answers, that would really help me out, you know?
Oh.
Whenever you're ready. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sottle, joined by Kolento. I'm sure this is going to be an incredibly insightful interview. Got tons of just incredible questions here provided to me by the production team. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of information out of my friend here. So, Kolento, what is your happiest Hearthstone memory?
Probably Y-Game House Cup, I guess.
Great, I'm presuming you won that?
Of course.
So just soldier on through. When did you start playing Hearthstone? Wonderful, really learning a lot right now. What's your favorite part about Hearthstone?
I like how I can be asked dumb questions when I'm being interviewed.
Yep, expected. Who is your favorite Hearthstone caster?
Probably not you.
Really? Like, do you really want me to... All right, we're gonna get through this. Who is your best friend in Hearthstone? Any positivity? Can you pick one that you do like?
No.
We are back and ready to go with our game number 2, and I will just say, if you did just watch that little piece there with Sottle and Kolento, imagine how I feel. I have to do that all day, every weekend. It's a tough job.
Hang on, what do you mean? Clearly, I'm the victim in this scenario. Clearly, I'm the victim.
That's not what I got from that. Actually, I got Kolento being terrorized by you, but you know, everyone reads something different into these things, I guess.
I just find it strange that obviously, you know, all of these skits that we're showing, you know, all these like weird and wacky scenarios with a bunch of people, and then a perfectly normal interview with one of them. It seems like a weird choice to me. But move on.
Yeah, one thing I will say is before, I've not seen that, and I was not there, unfortunately, when all that stuff was filmed. That was scarily accurate to how other interviews we've had with Kolento turn out. Oh, what do you think about this? It's all right. Do you like Hearthstone? It's okay, yeah. You having fun? Not really. That's pretty much how all his interviews go. So that you are right, very, very accurate overall. But let's focus back in on Thijs versus Bozzzton. And Thijs currently winning 1-0, getting a win with that road very explosively with that best one Sottle's ever seen. Pretty incredible. But there's still a lot left to go. And as we mentioned at the start, I struggled to get past, can Druid take the win? Because to me, Demon Hunter's easily still strong enough to consistently perform, even though it did, I think, last week had a bit of a rough week, or maybe it was the week before, I can't remember. But yeah, overall, it really is just on this Druid here for Thijs. Bozzzton has the whole way to go, and I do think we are going to get in to a Druid match right now, so we'll see if Thijs can get off to an even quicker start here and go 2-0.
Pretty janky looking opener here from Bozzzton. He is going to hold on to the Sightless Watcher. Just look for some early tempo. Okay, that is looking much more promising now for Bozzzton.
All of the cards.
Yeah, just play all of the 1-drops all of the time.
Yeah, what did you think? I know neither of us are exactly specialists of Spell Druid, but what did you think of that mulligan there? He kept an Innovate and a Glowfly Swarm against
Seems good to me. I'm glad you recapped it for me because I didn't see what the mulligan was. But yeah, I think it's fairly well agreed upon in this matchup that the way you're going to win is scam Glowfly Swarm early. I think the reverse where you sort of Wild Growth or Overgrowth in Mount Seller turn is quite often a little bit too. And then by Mount Seller comes down, you can just be dead to Kayn like 100% of the time if they have it in their hand because there's just too much early damage that's coming through. So I think Glowfly Swarm just being the little bit faster play is generally the go-to in the matchup.
That's what's interesting, right? Because a lot of the time, you think Druid, okay, ramp for fungal spores or Wild Growth, Overgrowth, any ramp or card draw. It's just an interesting mulligan to see why. Well, I hope Thijs has removal for the next few turns before he can get that Glowfly out. Because if not, he might be dead.
Right. Yeah, but this is, I guess you call it the APAC mulligan, where Jira and Derek have talked about this a lot, where in earlier weeks they were like, wow, I think I'd mulligan for more removal here, and just consistently every APAC player was just keeping the high roll and just trusting their deck from that point.
I thought the APAC mulligan was keeping box in Mage.
Wow!
I thought that's where you were going with.
That's a whole puzzle box of tricks you're opening with that one, Raven.
Bozzzton is still playing a Crimson Sigil runner in his list, just the one. But honestly, I've been messing a little bit with Demon Hunter myself, and I still think there is space for the card. Although weaker as an actual body, just more card draw. I think I was even looking at trying to put like the most card draw you can fit in Demon Hunter to make it go, because for me, it feels like that's the only time it fails, is when those odd times where nothing quite pieces together and your hand gets a little bit dry.
So I think if you're really paying attention, 3 cards in Thijs' hand are face up right now. I think Bozzzton looked at deck list just to double check that Thijs wasn't running Swipe or anything in particular. But I think based on that hero power to a 3-1 and then leaving it there, is the only scenario that happens in Innovate, Glowfly Swarm, Moonfire? Because I can't think of another reason why you'd do it.
Yeah, I do agree, actually. I think, although sometimes we may be going a little bit much on hand reading, I think for the opening hand against exactly Druid, because its options in the early game are so limited, yeah, I think that's pretty fair. But here comes the Glowfly.
Yeah.
Bozzzton?
Because the only reason you'd hero power it, right, would be to Moonfire it. But the only reason you wouldn't Moonfire it that turn is because you have Glowfly Swarm in your hand, and you want to maximize the spells that you're holding over. It just makes sense.
That is just logical. Beaming Psychic actually pretty clutch in this matchup, not only for trading Glowflies, but going for, most of the time you Beaming Psychic and Demon Hunter to put a minion from 2 to 4. And what that does as well is just dodge the Bog Beams, right? Which I think is very good. Dodges the Wraths as well. Obviously dodges Crystal Power. So these Beaming Psychics, again, just continuing to prove how valuable they are in Demon Hunting. So.
Right.
Time grows short.
So there's 4, 6, 8, 9 available that could have gone face there. 11 available that could have gone face. 12, 13, 14 damage on face that turn. So there was an option just to ship every single card you had to face. But then you don't have mana for meta hero power next turn anyway. So sure. Yeah, I was thinking since you weren't dead to Savage Roar in that scenario anyway, you could potentially just go all out damage. But if Bozzzton's going to do that, it's better for him to do it on the following turn anyway. So board control does make sense here.
And honestly, my view, if I was Bozzzton right now, would be trade off some of these minions that you can, get some value trades. But also, if Innovate and Glowfly was kept, what's there even likely to be as an answer to this, right? And a follow-up. Unless they literally have, what, second Glowfly, then they might just die anyway. And if they don't, then, well, Bog Beam's going to be full mana. Wrath, obviously, two mana. The Crystal Powers, these all add up, and there is only 5 mana available because Thijs hasn't ramped, because he went for the keep on that early Glowfly.
Yeah, it would have to be like Overgrowth into then a spell that would get discounted to really have any kind of significant impact against your board.
And again, that's
or
very
at least have any significant impact over the coming turns. Yeah, and it was like a 3-4 card hand at the time. Like playing around combination of cards in that hand just seems like nonsense.
Now, though, for Thijs, there is Innovate into the Overflow next turn to heal and redraw. Yep. But Overflow is significantly weaker when you are using it purely to stay alive and draw cards and not to push some level of board impact, either heal up a Mount Seller or draw into more Mount Seller procs, or do the usual Ysera and then go into Overflow. So when you use it out of desperation, it does get significantly weaker. So if Thijs overflows, and say he draws a Bog Beam and, I don't know, something else, we won't be able to play any minions, right? So it means that
he play the Bog Beam even
more.
Oh,
it wouldn't be true mana, yeah. So it's like, when you get these overflows out for this desperation plays, it really is to just hope you live for one more turn and then do the powerful things.
Time grows short.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
Although this
I
looks
think Bozzzton mainly just thinking this turn about whether he needs to get all of this Twin Slice and Second Slice damage to face before it can come down, but the chances of any relevantly sized taunt when your opponent doesn't have 7 natural mana crystals available is just so unlikely in this scenario, right?
Exactly, and this is the issue, isn't it? Overflow comes down, only putting Thijs to 12. There's what, 4, 5, 6 with hero power. Thijs knows there'll be 7 minimum because he knows the second slice is there. It's not asking Bozzzton to have a ton of damage to finish up this game, and it just went a little bit too quick here. He's going to clean this one up pretty nicely, and even the innovate into the Glowfly was just not enough.
Yeah, the curve was just so powerful from Bozzzton. He had a handful of 1-drops, he drew a Twin Slice, and then he Sightless Watchered into the Satyr Overseer, which, chalk one up for Team Sightless Watcher in that regard, I guess, right? Being able to secure such an early, powerful early game curve. Picking up that Satyr Overseer off the top was huge, because if that draw was a whiff instead of a Satyr Overseer in that position, that might have healed Thijs for, 6, 12 over the course of the game with those extra minions not hanging around and attacking. I'm assuming from Raven's frozen camera that Raven has deserted us, so I will fly solo for now at least, as we're now in the position where Thijs and Bozzzton have squared this up at 1 game apiece. 1 game apiece in this crucial series, of course. Again, it's very hard to break down actual specifics in what these matches mean for these Division B players, but the simple story is that these are all must-win matches for every player involved, apart from perhaps Viper, who has a buffer. So here now at 1-1, Raven was talking before he froze in time, as you can see, about how difficult it might be for Druid to be able to get a win in this series, and it does seem, at least here at the first hurdle, that the Druid has fallen, but it does still have the ability now to go up against Rogue, which is a reasonable matchup, and even Hunter, which is winnable if the same sort of scenario comes down, where a very early Glowfly Swarm can take control of proceedings. But I think this Highlander Hunter dynamic this week is something that does interest me. Thank you. Much better. Much better. Oh, what a picture to choose as well. I don't think that's the most flattering image we could have chosen of Raven, but I will soldier on. The Hunter dynamic. Okay, I'm just getting word that Raven has some pretty serious technical difficulties. Look like his internet has just gone down. So instead of making me soldier on solo, it looks like we are going to go to a very quick break and allow us to get the full glory of the Raven and Sottle duo coming back. So apologies for the slight delay, but we'll be back as soon as we can. Do not go anywhere, guys.
I'm actually back. Sorry about that, everyone. I know you would have missed me greatly. I had a slight internet issue, but it's fixed now, I hope. But we are going to continue with this series. You're not being left alone with Sottle, don't worry. But yeah, that is going to be even it up here as Bozzzton took the win in the Demon Hunter matchup. Fairly, what I was trying to say before I realized my internet, and I did wonder why for a second I heard Sottle just talking over me, which was a bit weird, was the sidekicks did a great job in that matchup, right, of just making the board slightly more awkward to deal with and allowing some of those value trades that really just pushed enough damage for Bozzzton to get there.
Yeah, sidekicks have just become more and more clutch as the weeks have gone on. You know, there was a debate which seems ridiculous now as to whether that card even goes into your deck, where it just seems so powerful against so many options. And even as like new decks appear, it turns out that Sidekick is still one of the best cards against those new decks. Like Quest Warlock, for example, like it just helps to play around Dark Skies and, you know, gets your Bladebound Adept out of range of a Nether Breath and all these kind of things. So like it's just such a powerful card in the deck that I think you know, we, as in general, were a little late to catch on to that as a tech inclusion in Demon Hunter.
Yep, but we did get there in the end. Let's kick off the next game. It is going to be the Druid for Thijs once again. But now Bozzzton is going to be locking in that Rogue. And have that Pharaoh Cat giving the nice Winged Guardian, which it could come in pretty clutch later on in the game, honestly, against Druid, which, you know, the targeted removals obviously will not work. But for now, Bozzzton does have to get there a little bit slow. Dirty Tricks looks great to me, though, honestly. Better than a dagger.
It does, yeah. I was about to say the good news is that he does have Dirty Tricks, which, you know, clues in the name. You're playing against Spell Druid. That's pretty likely to draw you 2 cards fairly quickly.
It also
It's just whether Bozzzton feels like he needs the options right now, but I don't see any real reason why he'd be happy with this hand curving out from this point.
Yeah, and for me as well, just having it on curve is great because it's one of those win-wins to a certain extent, right? They either play Fungal Fortunes this turn, which, yeah, they draw cards, that kind of sucks, but you get to draw cards, or they don't, and they don't play Fungal Fortunes this turn, and you still have the secret live, so it really is pretty much good news either way for Bozzzton.
Yeah, I guess the counter-argument is he could be more aggressive with Praise Galakron into Lackey that turn and just get more immediate board presence, more early damage, put the Druid under some more pressure. But I think in general, just playing on curve here just seems solid.
It's not even if it gets played around, it's a sheer matter of time till the secret gets procced. And now Bozzzton has the Bamboozle as well. But now it's the question is, does Dagger, and you'll understand my question, I guess, and it's not quite as literal as I mean, but does Dagger do anything against Druid? Is it really helping any trades? Is it really helping push that much damage? Is that really the way Rogue's going to win in this matchup? I feel the Dagger does almost nothing in this one.
Yeah, it's also a weird turn just in terms of planning your curve, because you're pretty certain Thijs is going to play some kind of spell this turn. The idea that they wouldn't like coin Overgrowth here or play some other option is pretty unlikely, even like Rising Winds to cycle there, as you see off the top. So you've got to even think about the remainder of your deck and just be thinking about, like, well, what do I need to still have in my hand? For example, if Dirty Tricks goes off and you draw Evil Miscreant next turn, where you'd still quite like to be hanging on to this Ethereal Lackey. But then in regards to your question, the Bamboozle versus Dagger, it feels like Bamboozle is going to be significantly more impactful overall.
Now just another hero power from Thijs. Thijs holding on. Really wanting to just go for the hard ramp and have the most spells available post Mount Seller turn, I imagine.
Right. It's kind of smart. He's reducing the gap between the first spell he plays and his insane power turn, which then in turn gives Bozzzton less turns in the middle where he can develop a big threatening board.
And also, does he really want to cycle cards when this turn is Overgrowth, and then soon it's going to be Mount Seller and then potentially Overflow? I don't think he needs to use that Rising Wind to cycle cards right now. I think it might be better off used as a Mount Seller combo piece more than anything. But yeah, I do like it overall.
Dirty Tricks coming in pretty clutch, though. I guess the flick would have been drawn anyway, if you actually want to look at it that literally. But the flick here is the premium answer to the Mount Seller. So Bozzzton now needs to think about contesting board enough with his other cards that he's able to fight off some of the beasts while he flicks away the Mount Seller on the following turn.
Huge fan of Shadow Step in almost every single matchup, no matter the circumstances. But as a great caster once said, it always gets there. His head cracked for Bozzzton. Although I don't think it's to pick this game.
That like random throwaway line has really stuck with you, huh? We're just on that now, are we?
Yeah, it's gonna be the thing. I'll be like, oh yeah, you know, we look back a few years. It's like, yeah, Sol was never really right about that head crack, was he? And it's just gonna. Do you remember all those times he used to say it?
It was clearly a very literal statement made in earnest, and not just something that I threw out once that Raven has repeated like 17 times since.
And there'll be 17 more. Another Dirty Trick Zone, a selection of secrets being played for Bozzzton. And they aren't really secrets at this point for Thijs, but they are things he does have to consider being played around, because now the Mount Seller is going to generate the ambush, but he does have a Bog Beam to just insta-kill the ambush minion anyway. So at least that secret, not a problem. Bog Beam in, you're drawing Bozzzton cards, so at least Bozton's kind of keeping up with this turn.
Blackjack Stunner draw is huge here, because Thijs, unless he like is an absolute god gamer, is not just going to hero power something to get rid of the Bamboozle, so the secret is still going to be active on the following turn. I guess Rush Minions could have played into that as well.
True.
I guess they still can.
I think, yeah, this Ironbark always gets played, right? I don't think there's a reason, again, with Overflow in hand. I think you do make your biggest threatening board possible. Because Because although there's the flick...
Oh! Just
destroy
put his
these.
whole board in his hand, Raven.
Good, right? He could. Could easily bounce the 4-6 and then bounce the bottom Mount Seller.
Yeah, so the problem is that you just don't get to flick. You did just see the other Mount Seller get burned, though, which is a big part of the reason why you do pretty much always want to flick the Mount Seller.
Don't let the door hit you.
Yeah, he even has the Rush Lackey as well, right?
Yep. Thijs here, though, will be assuming fully clenched position against Edwin Van Cleef being the end of this turn.
Don't let the door hit you. Choose soon.
Yep, weaponized wasps seems like no big deal. Druid's not going to be finding any lackeys anytime soon. Or steps the Maniac instead for fully invoked Galakron and still gets the full clear. This is really smart. I had not looked at this option at all. This is really, really nicely done.
Yeah,
from
honestly,
Bozzzton.
the second Bozzzton hovered that Galakron, that was like, wait, is that just he does this? Because if so, that is obviously insane. Oh! I wondered whether he was going to pick it then because he was playing Galakron next turn.
He has 1, 2, 3, 4 2-ofs remaining in 17 cards, so that still seems like some way off. Don't say it. I know what you're going to say, and don't say it.
You say it. What's the chance?
Oh, I thought you were just going to say, well, he draws 4 cards off Galakron, so no problem.
Okay.
That's just the 4 2-ofs that he needs.
I thought I was gonna.
But
I
sure.
thought you wanted me to say it sounds like either a 1 in 7 or a 1 in 13 chance.
Yeah.
This is a huge problem though for Thijs because bouncing a Mount Seller at surface level might look a little bit strange. It's like, well, you could just play it and summon a new set of beats. Well, no, because he used so many of his 0-cost spells, which are the priority, and also his Mount Seller's 8 mana, which means he doesn't even have that much mana to deal with. Most of his spells are now like 2 mana or the crystal powers, but still that summons what maximum 2 beasts. Like, that isn't really a strong turn compared to what he could normally do.
Right. So Bozzzton here, decision, obviously flick away the glowflies, seems great, just push a bit more damage, develop your board a little bit. But Bozzzton does still know that he has to deal with that Mount Seller the turn it comes down again, and if he gives up a way to do that, he might be in trouble. So I'm actually on board with just playing the Galakron here, because you can still pick apart most of the remaining board state, even if your 0-mana cards aren't good to you here.
That's it, right? The backstab plus the 2 minions already on board and the weapon mean that you're pretty safe, even worst case scenario, and if you're going to draw like this, you're extremely safe.
Darkness wanes.
Does he just make the big board himself?
Yep.
At first I was wondering whether he'd wipe the board with the deal 5, but this just looks way better. Play it all, burn the latches, it doesn't matter.
His return is nigh.
I honestly think you might be right.
Yeah, so I'm not even joking. I would have definitely
Yeah.
slammed that evil miscreant. Look at his hand! When's he
Yeah.
going to play all these cards?
Yeah.
It's like an extra 3/6 on the board against Druid. Insane.
Right.
I mean, this is still... I'll file this under the classification of insane too. But
Yeah, first cabinet, top drawer, under I for insane.
just a screenshot of this board. Oh, there is still a chance though. I spy a Ysera and not a lot of cards in deck, sorry, for Thijs. Bozzzton can hack through this pretty easily with Shield of Galakron Goblin Lackey and still hold the Flick for emergencies. Mainly because I don't think Flick's that good at this point, because it's so expensive, unless he wants to evolve it as well, maybe.
Right. Do the same thing with Winged Guardian if you wanted to be just fully mana efficient with that one play.
Assassinate, although I was looking at Dragon Sword, I did just mention the Ysera potential shenanigans. So Assassinate to just say, okay, it's a lot of mana, but it's a lot of mana insta-killer thing. And when your opponent might be summoning huge dragons, it might...
Right. Ooh. Rush Evolve now on the Shield of Galakron.
Yep.
Sure.
Seems good.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not
Very
get
good.
Sunwalker? That seems fine.
My dream is your nightmare.
Well, do the thing, Thijs. The play the Ysera, going to innovate out the Rising Wind to draw a card. Hope it's about 12 dragons that somehow all have taunt.
Yeah, it's only about 1 every 2 cards is a portal right now, though, so the chances of this doing anything... Yep. Whew! That was a game of Hearthstone, Raven.
It really, really was there. Bozzzton taking the lead 2-1, and honestly, yes, it's very early in our day, but so far, Druid's not looking great, is it? It's 0-2 just in this series. Obviously, we've only played 1 match so far, or getting to that point. But this is it, right? If Thijs was queuing Demon Hunter, I'd be much more surprised if Demon Hunter loses 2 games in a row. But it's the Druid that's struggling, and that's just the way it is. And now it has Hunter to go up against. And although I think Druid and Demon Hunter can be quite good against Hunter itself, I just wonder if it just takes a no glow flies for Druid, and then Hunter's killed them. Is that my experience at least of the matchup? So pretty much on the edge here for Thijs, and Bozzzton as one of the players who was in some dire straits earlier in round robin. This could be, another step on that road to victory, or at least survival, should I say, as, it wasn't too long ago. Bozzzton was at 0 wins and not looking too great at the bottom of Division B. If he beats Thijs now, it's just that extra little step he might need to survive.
Yeah, this would push through to who's played 4 wins, which would put him relatively secure. That 4-win mark is where you start getting into complete nonsense if you end up with 4 wins and end up in the relegation bracket too, because then you're really coming down to a lot of tiebreaker 2 scenarios, and they're having to be multiple ties across the board. So I think that is goal number 1 for this week for most of these players, is just shoot for that 4-win target, and then they can stop and reevaluate from there.
Yep, so we do know it is going to be Bozzzton on his Hunter. And as usual, I'm going to do the Hunter inspection here to see if I appreciate this deck or not. Okay, so Bozzzton is running this kind of, I would say, his own build of this. It's definitely not a common one. It has the Injured Tol'vir as an extra 2-drop, still runs the Felmore, as well as all the usual suspects. It also is running the Maiev Shadowstone. He's running an Escaped Mana Saver, which personally I'm not a fan of. But because of all this extra early game, it means he isn't running Nagrand Slam, and there's just a couple of other choices missing there. But overall, the deck does seem, I'll say, fine.
The fires of vengeance burn.
I'll give it a solid fine out of 10.
Right.
Says Hunter Connoisseur Raven.
Yeah, really, it's just more about just beefing up that 4-drop spot with the Escape Mana Saver and the Maiev Shadowsong. And just see how that plays out versus Druid, where that is one of the power turns you are going to get.
You can see it on Bozton's face. I do not need to paint this picture whatsoever as to how important that moment felt to Bozzzton, as he was about to just completely whiff a turn with Highlander Hunter in one of the most crucial games of Hearthstone he has played in a long time. And then Felmore just comes flying off the top for him.
Especially when he's got coin into evasive Felwing. And if we're talking general Hearthstone rules, that would leave him a pretty poor follow-up turn. Doesn't matter if your opponent is dead. So I do think outside of some pretty strong draws, we are just going to see the coin Felwing here. Because Druid just doesn't deal with it. Just doesn't kill it, ever. And there's a good enough follow-up turn for me. So coin evasive Felwing into Fairy Dragon Hero power looks fine for me.
Is that worth using your coin on when you have Dynatamer Bran in hand? Just get 1 extra power right now? Can't you just go Fairy Dragon into Feywing and then still have coin Bran for lethal on a follow-up?
I do.
It's still untargetable. It's still just going to hit him in the head.
It's also 2 extra power though, right?
Oh, sure, yeah, you're right. I thought it was a 4/5 for some reason, which would actually just be a much better
That'd be
card.
insane, yeah. That would be so
yeah.
crazy. Yeah, I mean, maybe I would play it too aggressively, but I feel like you're going to get to Bran at a good time anyway, based on what the hand looks like.
Yeah, I like this. This makes sense to me.
It's way worse against Thingy, though, right? Just
Thingy?
worse against the, say, Innovate Glowfly?
Sure, yeah.
I think that's where it gets me, honestly, is just all the games I feel I lose in this matchup as Hunter is against specific Glowfly, like on curve or very early. And that's why I want to just dump as much stats as possible onto the board as quickly as possible.
There's a turn 5 for you as well if your Unleash the Hounds doesn't end up being good.
It does have a bit of a
Scout.
whiff. Got mana
It
saver,
does, no,
remember.
that's true.
It's got
A lot of
be-
ways to play this.
I think it's got to be Unleash, clear with the dogs, and then go face with everything else and just hero power and set up that coin brand.
We only clear 2 things that way. Is that good enough?
I don't think you're dying with 4, right? With 4
Well,
left
it's
up.
not just dying. It's like the amount of board you can then lose going back the other way. You put your opponent to 10. So Dynatema Brand isn't immediately lethal, but it's very close. So you'd be vulnerable to like Power of the Wild or Savage Roar clear turn into then Overflow plus what on the following turn? Yeah.
And
Seems hard to create a scenario where you're losing in that world.
And also you've got the tracking, right? And there are a lot of cards that will just end the game with tracking.
Right.
I think at this point, if you start trading, giving your opponent time, and if Druid has it, then that's when they beat you.
Wait, did this all go face?
If this all goes face, I'm going to high-five Bozzzton next time I see him, because that is just impressive.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
Now, let me just check Thijs' list. Oh, Thijs is only running 1 Savage Roar.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd be dead to Savage Roar power?
He's dead to Savage Roar power, yeah, which I think is fine to play around. But I think he's more interested in setting up lethal through, you know, potentially clear, like the ability for Thijs to clear his board without him setting up lethal was something that I was concerned about when I was talking through the play last turn. So I guess in that world, yeah, this just makes more sense. Just ship all the damage. And now Thijs needs cards to help clear this board, plus Crystal Power. And even then, that takes him back up to 9, which is only 1 out of range of Coin Dynatema.
Right. I guess this is a Crystal Power I wasn't too hung up on with my suggestion last turn.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this just works out better overall.
The breakpoints for Power of the Wild are just not pleasant here either. It needed to be Savage Roar for a more efficient clear. In fact, like, Bozzzton being so aggressive that Thijs had to use Crystal Power to clear is actually, by proxy, making the clear less efficient. Because Crystal Power couldn't be used to take out one of the minions.
Yeah, you mean the aggression makes Crystal Power to heal.
Mm-hmm. Is that what I said? Did I say the opposite?
Yeah, you said clear. But regardless, look at the relief. Bozzzton there cleans this game up and cleans this series up. And honestly, with some of the frustrations we've seen from Bozzzton throughout Grandmasters, some of the crazy games, some of the stress levels, it must feel fantastic. Okay, day 1 of the last round robin weekend, match number 1, fairly straightforward 3-1 victory. And I don't mean straightforward as in Bozzzton had to do nothing to win, but I think it was just no ultra crazy late games. Just get the job done, play cleanly, win your games. 3-1 over Thijs. Bozzzton must be feeling fantastic right now.
Yeah, and I do like the way the curve was played. Obviously, Bozzzton got a little bit lucky there in how efficiently he was able to play off the top of his deck with the Felmore draw into the Fairy Dragon draw, which basically just fixed his whole early game for him. But the way, just playing out that curve, holding onto coin for the Dynatoma Brand was nicely done. I think the lethal push at the end, I don't know, obviously that was a really hard turn to break down, and we were still considering options as the rope was burning, so I'm sure Bozzzton was too. But I wonder if perhaps the most optimal setup is the hero power and 2 of the dogs going face, and then you kill 1 of the minions, and whether that cleans things out the most effectively. But it's very, very hard to say in that spot. But again, the finer details of plays aside, big picture wise, that win just means that Bozzzton is going to have a much better night's sleep tonight before he has to play again over the weekend. Whereas Thijs is now at serious trouble, and it's starting to get very scary, because if you look at some of the names who are now right the way down there, deep in trouble, Kolento, Kolento, Pavel, it's serious business for some of the biggest names in Hearthstone right now, who are just staring down relegation and are actually right now, the way it stands, probably getting relegated in the most scenarios.
Yeah, and that's the big deal. And this isn't something that has been suddenly decided. Not only has this the final week of the round robin phase, but also there were 3 Swiss weeks which landed these players in Division B. If they were in Division A, half of those 4 players at the bottom still have a chance and feel quite comfortable, right? They're looking way more comfortable if they're sat in Division A. But the 3 weeks of Swiss did not place them there because they did not perform as well as the other players. So although it looks like it's come down to relatively few matches of Hearthstone, there's been tons of games of Hearthstone played throughout the Swiss and throughout round robin. So pretty crazy overall. Let's take a look at the schedule and see how we are cracking on today. See what we've got coming up the rest of the day, as well as we are going to be moving on to a danger match, Sottle, as we have Kolento versus Zim. Those 2 players are sitting on only 2 wins apiece right now, which means they will also be vying for that victory. And that, I think, this match specifically is going to have one of the biggest impacts, because it is 2 of the players right at the bottom buying out, so 1 player has to lose here.
Well, so here's the big talking point here, right? There are now 4 players in Division B that remain on 2 wins. At Kolento, Zim, Pavel has played 6 matches. Thijs has played 6 matches now, based on that he's just played. So Zim versus Kolento, this is both of their game in hand against the other 2 players that they are straight up head-to-head racing against for those final spots right now, based on the result of our first match. So one of these players is going to take advantage of that match in hand, and one of these players is just going to be sat right down there at the bottom with Pavel and Thijs by the time this match is done.
Yeah, and one of the, I guess, I'll say interesting, but also just crazy impacts the future matches can make is Zim is going to be playing Casey on Sunday, and then Thijs plays Viper, and Kolento plays RDU, and then Pavel plays Bozzzton. So outside of Pavel and Bozzzton, maybe, the other 3 players in danger are playing the players just sat above them. So that can then just bring everything closer together once again. So basically, it's going to be a nutty weekend. If there's ever a weekend to watch some Hearthstone, it's this one. But here we have Zim versus Kolento coming right up. Double Warrior Ban